Welcome back to the Budding Author Podcast with me, Simon Ward, your host. Today, we're talking to a horror writer. Woo-hoo! Mark Allen. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Wow, it's my pleasure. Horror films and horror writing is not an area that I'm that familiar with, in all honesty. I think we talked just before we went on air that sort of the screenwriting side of thing has been quite big for you. And one script you'd done, 11 years had passed before it sort of woke up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've got a screenplay that I sold back in like 2013, and it didn't get made. And, eventually truth is I kind of forgot about it. And just clear out of the blue, I got contacted by the producers last October, and they say, okay, this is hush hush. You can't say any names. You can't say any actors. You can't even say the name of the movie. But we're in the process of shooting this movie that you sold us. And I'm like, great. That's great.
That's
And
shock, isn't it?
so, so they got the movie filmed. They've got it edited. They've got picture lock done, which is where they've done all the actual visual editing that they're going to do. And now it's all, doing all the sound and the music and the scoring and all, then all the promotional stuff starts in that ramp up to the release. And when they release it, I can spill all the details. Yeah. Until then, I have to kind of,
I think,
but that's the movie business.
Having sold the rights to it, will you not get any more money for it, or is it just the prestige that's going to be nice?
Mainly it's going to be the prestige. The front money that I got paid to actually sell the script, more than likely that's all the money that I'll ever see. Yeah. And I'm okay with that because I can benefit from it in other ways.
Yeah, I would be over the moon with that too. I want to talk to you about horror writing. Because when we see a horror movie, quite often it's the music that sort of creates the tension. We've seen examples where we show movie scenes without the music, and it's not quite have the same grip as when you've got the intensity of the music taking it along. When you're writing novels, horror novels, how do you create that suspense without the music?
The great thing about writing a novel as opposed to writing a screenplay, with a novel, I'm in control of everything. I am making a movie that's going to play in my reader's head up here, right on the inside of their skull. And there's going to be everything. The lighting, the cinematography, the mood, the atmosphere. I listen to music when I write, and I listen to different music, not only for different books, but for different characters and for different situations in the book. Because it helps get me in the right mindset. You hear actors all the time talk about being method actors. They get into character and blah, 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 and all this stuff that a good actor does. Yeah. Well, I consider myself a method writer. Okay. I have to believe the impossible scenario that I've put these fictional characters and mythical creatures into. I have to believe that this is happening to them. And I have to believe what they say and what they do. If I can't believe it, I can't write it in a way that a reader will believe it too. Yeah. And readers demand absolute authenticity. Readers are smart.
Yeah.
And if the minute you show a chink in your armor, just like that, you've lost them.
Yeah.
Because that suspension of disbelief, right out the window it goes, and you're back at square one.
Yeah, I think if the writing doesn't emotionally get you, it's got no chance of grabbing the reader, has it?
Exactly right. Yes.
I don't know whether I should admit this really, but my first novel, Finding Love in 2045, it took 4 years to write. And at the end of those 4 years, I did a final read through before I published. And there was tears in my eyes for the main character. It's ridiculous, really. So obviously I know the story so well, but I'm just so emotionally engaged with the main character, Mia. Some would say I fell in love with the character. Perhaps maybe that's what I did. I don't know.
And that's okay to do that. It's okay to do that.
I think it's a need really to be able to understand your character to that level. And take it forward. What sort of tricks do you use to sort of to really grab that tension in a horror novel?
It all starts with the characters for me. I do plot some. I'm not a real heavy plotter. Whenever I start a new project, whether it's a screenplay or a novel, I start with writing character biographies, not just character sketches. I write from the time this person is born to the present time when they're going to come into the story.
Yeah.
I have to know everything. I have to know when they were born, where they were born, how they were born, what kind of family life did they have? You know, was the old man an alcoholic? Was the mother emotionally unavailable? You know, all this kind of stuff. I have to know, even if it doesn't show up in the book itself. I have to know it because all of that stuff is going to inform what my character does and what my character says. So it all starts with the characters. Then I start plugging them into situations where life and death stakes come up really fast. And then I have to find a way to take those life and death stakes and then just send them higher and higher and higher, you know?
I think understanding the characters on that level, when it comes to a very crucial situation, it's their history and their upbringing and the things they've previously faced that drives them to make that decision. And you don't always have to reveal that, but as the writer, you need to know what's led to that decision. It's not just then they took the opposite route sort of thing. It's why they took that route, and you know deeper in why they took that route. Have you been to many sort of open days and sort of launch events where people have talked to you about your stories?
Yes, I have, and I'll tell you what, that is one of the things that writers live for, is connecting with that audience and actually talking to them. Sometimes they will see things in the character that you didn't when you were writing it, but they'll say something and you'll have this epiphany like, holy crap, why didn't I think of that? You know, and then you're just sitting there and you're smiling and you're nodding and you're being gracious and you're going, yes, you are absolutely right. Yeah. Did I think of that 2 years ago? Well, of course I did.
You know? I had an interesting situation. It was at a book club I went to where I was talking about Finding Love in 2045, and the main character Mia. somebody at the writing group questioned and said Mia, they thought she was quite shallow the way that she'd behaved, and someone else said no, she wasn't, and they were arguing about sort of the merits of the character and how she'd behaved. And I was just sitting back listening to this. I'm thinking this is just quality, that they're discussing my book to that level and passionately. So obviously the character
had
sort
that
of
as a great compliment.
The character had got to them. And it's funny, in another one of mine, Time to Click, Ethan, the main character, it's quite a tough thing, because normally you would want your audience to like your main character, because he's not a bad person, but he does some things that are sort of questionable. So I think as people sort of going through the book, it's like, did you actually like him, or did you think he deserved what he got, sort of thing? And I think having that balance, that people can discuss it is quite good, don't you think, Mark?
Yes, because your reader is always going to bring their life experiences. They're going to bring their likes and their dislikes. They're going to bring their political views, their social views, their religious views, everything that makes them uniquely that individual. They bring to that reading experience when they sit down to read a book. They're going to interpret your book as part of their world through their own unique prism. So you can have 10,000 people read your novel, and they walk away with 10,000 different experiences from reading your novel.
Yeah.
And now, sometimes those experiences may be parallel. Sometimes they're going to be perpendicular, but they're always going to be different.
I think that's the difference between the movies and the books, isn't it? The movies are sort of painted a very definitive line, don't they? Where novels sort of leave more to the imagination, and that's why people enjoy reading books.
I think so, because they can interpret it any way they want. With a movie, you've got an actor that looks a certain way. You've got a camera at a certain angle with a certain lens shooting at a certain shutter speed. They've decided on what music they want. They know where the editing cues are. Everything is laid out for you. So you're limited. I mean, still, you can have 10,000 people watch a movie that you wrote, and they'll walk away with 10,000 different experiences. But the range of those experiences, the variety of those experiences is more limited, than it is with a book, and the funny thing is, as I get older, I find myself concentrating more on writing novels than on screenplays, and I find myself missing the film business less and less and less.
Okay. Because for me, I think the getting your book made into a film is that's like the moonshot, isn't it? That's where the rewards are. But I think you're quite right that sort of the writer's craft, it's not all about book sales. It's about enjoying the process and the process of creation, and whether that brings thousands and thousands of book sales, millions of book sales, or in my case, less. But it's been able to portray that story and share that story with people. That's sort of the joy. Recently,
absolutely, the people who get into the arts, whether it's as a novelist or a poet or an actor, whatever it is, anyone who gets into the creative arts or the performing arts for money, they're getting into it for the wrong reasons, because the chances of getting to a point where you're on the A list are very, very, very slim. And for most people, it does not happen.
No.
You know, people love to talk about Hollywood, you know, because movies are a global medium. But here's the thing. The SAG-AFTRA union in Hollywood, they have over 180,000 card-carrying members, okay? Less than 10% actually make their living from acting and nothing else. Meaning they're going from set to set to set to set to set. They don't have a second job. They're not parking cars somewhere or, you know, waitressing tables or something. Yeah, less than 10%. And of that 10%, get this. If you talk about the A-listers, the big stars like Harrison Ford, Michelle Pfeiffer, even some of the younger A-listers like Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet, people like that, Andrew Garfield. They're less than 1% of all actors. Yeah. Okay. Are they making millions and millions of pictures? Yes, you bet they are. But here's the thing. Every year, SAG puts out a breakdown of the union and what people are making. Last year, the average salary for an actor in the union was only $27,000. Now, that takes into account the day players, the bit parts, the walk-ons, all those people who go work on a sitcom for one day, and then they're back parking cars at the Beverly Hills Hotel the next day.
Yeah.
And they may not get another gig because they're going to auditions, they're doing all that stuff, right? But they may not get another gig for 6 months. Yeah, they may get paid $5,000 for one day, but the next day they're back to parking cars because Los Angeles is one of the highest cost of living areas in the United States.
Yeah.
So getting into it for the money is the wrong thing. If you want to make money, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a stockbroker, do something like that.
You've got to enjoy the process.
You have to get into this because you love it.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Mark. What got you into writing at the very beginning? And what
we have to go back. We have to go back to when I was 10 years old. We got a writing assignment in my English class on a Friday. And the assignment was go home, write a 3-page short story, bring it in on Monday. It can be about anything you want, but it's got to be 3 pages. So I went home, as was my custom back then. We're talking, you know, the 1960s here. And I turned on the TV because on Friday afternoons, the station that I got, because we could only get 3 where I lived.
I remember that.
Yeah. And one of them showed old black and white Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi horror films on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I went home that day, turned on the TV, and they were showing a Godzilla movie. And I forget which one it was. But when I sat down on Sunday to write my story, I wrote a completely plagiarized story.
That was all in your head, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, about Godzilla attacking Tokyo. I turned it in on Monday morning, and I got an A+ on it. And I had never gotten an A+ before for anything. And I got praised by my teacher in front of the class. I got praised by both of my parents, who were not ones to just kind of heap out praise to begin with.
That was back in those days. That wasn't the case, was it?
No, it was not the case, not the way I was raised.
Yeah, I think.
And so one thing led to another, and I started writing and writing. I'd take my extra money and go buy ink pens and spiral notebooks. And I would sit at night on the weekends just writing out short story after short story after short story. My grandfather gave me an old typewriter that he had that he wasn't using. And my mother started bringing me home reams of paper. And dude, I was off. I was on my way.
So you've always been with horror then?
Yes, I've never when it comes to writing, I've never gotten away from horror for very long. Now, I did get away from writing for several years because as a young man, I did a career in the military.
Okay.
And when you're deploying and you're doing the job I did and all that, you have your mind on other things. You have to be in a different wheelhouse. But what happened was, in about 1995, I was living in a barracks at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in Southern California. And it was a holiday weekend, and a bunch of the guys had gone out and rented a bunch of movies to watch. And one of the movies that they rented was Basic Instinct, very infamous movie, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are watching it, and all these Marines that I'm with, I'm a Navy corpsman. You know, I'm not a Marine. I was a Navy corpsman, but I was assigned to the Marines. I had to provide health care for them when these big, beautiful some bitches wind up getting shot. And so we're sitting there watching this, and these guys are just going just ape over Sharon Stone. Beautiful woman, lovely to look at, decent actress, you know. She got better over time, but when she did Basic Instinct, she was still fairly new to the craft.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, come on. Where's the story here? This movie's a piece of crap. And they turn around and look at me like I'm speaking Martian or something. And they go, Doc, what is wrong with you? Look at her.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, she's beautiful, but where's the story? And they went, who cares? And that got me so angry. And I sat there thinking, not at the guys. I understood the reaction. And, but I just thought I could write a better movie than this.
Yeah. To be honest, Mark, I've seen the amount of movies myself and my wife watch, and the quality is terrible. And that's why I've sort of stepped into screenwriting a bit. I'm thinking my stories are way better than this. Let's get it out there. But I'm mindful of time. Who's your top authors, and what's your top 3 movies, horror movies? What would you say is the best 3 movies that you think of?
Well, my top 3 authors: Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
Bram Stoker.
Yeah.
Bram Stoker. And everyone would expect me to say Stephen King, but I'm going to say Clive Barker.
Clive Barker.
Those are my big 3 literary influences. King influences me too, but more about how to perform the craft.
Yeah.
King has written some incredible books about how to be a writer, you know. So, top 3 movies or horror movies?
Yeah.
30 Days of Night.
30 Days of Night. I don't know whether I know that one. Who's in that one?
Oh man. Nobody big. It's a relatively low budget movie. They shot it for about $20 million down in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But I love this movie because it made vampires scary again.
Ah, got you. Okay.
And so 30 Days of Night, the 2010 or so remake of The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro and Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Ah.
What else? An old science fiction movie from the 1950s. Actually, there's two of them, so I'm going to give you a twofer. One is the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
The Beast.
Yes, it's an old black and white stop motion animation movie.
Yeah.
And another black and white movie from that era, a science fiction movie called Them. And it's about giant ants in New Mexico that have been enlarged from radiation fallout from all the nuclear testing that went on during World War II. That's for American movies. If you want to go to global cinema, number one influencer on me is the original 1954 Japanese film Gojira.
Gojira.
Yeah. Gojira. That is the movie that actually introduced us to what the world knows as Godzilla. But the actual name of the first film is Gojira.
Wow, that's you've got some there. I've just got the sunshine hitting me now. That's nice. So for me, I thought you'd have been going with. You're gonna really lambast me for this now. I thought you'd have been going for the Evil Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of movie.
I was already. If we want to talk about the horror franchises, believe it or not, the one that resonates with me the most are the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah.
It's Jason Voorhees is the ultimate mama's boy, really, when you think about it, because it was all about it. It was all about his mother. He was a special needs child, physically disabled, was picked on and bullied. His mother protected him as best she could until she thought that he had died, and she goes on a killing spree. But he didn't die. He's been living in the woods, feral, and he sees her killed, and that snaps him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the series goes on from there, and you've got the Frankenstein factor that comes into play in the 6th movie, and then he becomes supernatural Jason, and then he's essentially a zombie on steroids, because he's been brought back from the dead. He's now an indestructible killing machine. But everything comes back to his mother. Sooner or later in every movie, there's some reference to his mother. And that's because he is the ultimate mama's boy taken to a monstrous extreme.
I think we want to bring it back now to what we said at the very start. It's the importance of knowing your characters really well, and it's the depth of field of the character that sort of really sort of brings the depth to the movie from having that depth. And
in both film and books, it's all about the subtext. It's all about what you're really talking about. Are we really talking about vampires and werewolves and all this other stuff? No, that's not what we're really talking about. That's the window dressing you know, the real thing that you're talking about is something completely different. In my books, it's always about a moral dilemma. It's all about right and wrong, good and evil, and it's always about actions have consequences. Even taking no action can have a consequence, you know. And this is the stuff that is underneath everything that I do. And I do mean everything I do. You know, I have common themes that thread their way through everything because I think they're so important.
Yeah.
And not enough people are telling people these days, hey, you can do something stupid when you're a teenager that will still be affecting you when you're in your 60s and 70s.
Absolutely.
Not enough people are aiming stuff at young people and saying, hey, look, your decisions really do matter. And your parents cannot always smooth it over for you. Suck it up, buttercup. You're going to have to face the music at some point in your life.
Welcome to the real world, isn't it?
Yes.
Welcome to the real
very
world.
much so. Very much
Mark,
so.
just before we finish, Mark, what's your guilty pleasure? That's my final question.
My guilty pleasure. Well, literary, I would say rereading Frankenstein about once every year. The story resonates with me on so many levels because that's a story. I mean, Shelley wrote it about man and God.
Yeah.
I see it as fathers and sons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you've got an absentee father who fails to take responsibility, and you have a son who acts out because he wants his father to love him and his father will not. And what does he do? He gets angry and he lashes out.
That's a great take on that.
To me, that's Frankenstein. Film-wise, my guilty pleasure, Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
That was the movie that convinced me that Tom Cruise was not just a pretty face. He was a serious, committed actor.
Yeah, he dives right in, doesn't he? He gets really involved in his movies. He's not just reading the lines, is he? And that sort of stuff.
Right.
Mark, that has been absolutely fantastic. It's been a pleasure to have you on. It's been a pleasure also to have some sunshine on my face, which is very rare here in the UK.
Yeah, and, I see that.
We shall definitely have to talk again. It's been intriguing, and we'll leave a message in the comments for all the connections for Mark. So that's going to be there. So enjoy delving into Mark's world and reading some of his horror stuff. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Anytime.
Cheers. Love it, mate. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.